In today's episode, I am the Lorax, and I speak for the trees. Tales from Acme Support, the one where HP thinks I'm crazy. User calls up 1 minute before closing, demands to be shown how to save a Word document. In defense of tech support. I still have questions. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. I am the Lorax, and I speak for the trees. Her workflow was horrific. Print document, edit it by hand, scan in edits and email to herself, print that again, and scan to email to the customer. She had filled every single drawer, cabinet, and work surface at her desk, and even a few filing cabinets out on the floor with her printouts. IT got involved because they were going through toner at an insane rate, and she was basically treating this departmental printer like a personal printer. One of her suggestions for an accommodation was to get her a personal printer, which only addressed one of the problems. Lady was not very socially aware. No joke, we got a call from our printer contractor to inform us that we were exceeding our maintenance cycle by a lot. I personally hated every inch of it because of the sheer volume of paper she was wasting. Literal reams per week. More than the rest of her department, and this is AR, who has to keep a lot of paper records. IIRC, her claim was that her eyes were bad and the screen caused eye strain, so under the ADA she was allowed accommodations. I suggested an e-ink reader of some sort. The boss kicked it to legal. Legal pointed out she had not provided any documentation of a disability, and that even if she had, this didn't meet the definition of a reasonable accommodation by any stretch. Unbeknownst to IT at the time, it was actually worse than we thought. Her desire to avoid using a screen had her enlisting other people in the department to file her reports, again using her hand-edited printouts, which of course generated more printouts once the reports were finalized. Yes, there were several threats of a lawsuit from her. We're pretty laid back at our company, so no one retaliated or took things too seriously, but HR and legal had to sit her down and explain how the ADA actually works. Ultimately, we offered to accommodate her with special glasses, screen filters, even ordering special screens to reduce blue light, and she was adamant that she didn't want them and had to be allowed to print everything. Boot came down. No unnecessary printing, period. She could either take the offered accommodations or not at her preference, but printing was now a no-no. Her desk would need to be cleaned. We had to replace the overhead because the IKEA grade wood was warping under the weight. It took 3 interventions by IT and many more from her manager before her printing got down to something resembling the rest of her department. Part of her disciplinary action was being moved to the desk farthest from the printer, which I found endlessly amusing. Not sure if that's why she got fired, but she was fired some time later. Somewhat related, my dad worked with a guy who kept so much paper at his desk the fire marshal declared it a hazard during an inspection. Tales from Acme Support, the one where HP thinks I'm crazy. Yes, this is a tale of high expectations and assuming just a little bit too much. Mission: upgrade ESG to the latest supported version, 6.5 at the time, on the HP prod cluster. I had done a pre-flight upgrade in the dev environment which passed the automated upgrade with flying colors. Simple enough, right? Wrong. Kicked off the upgrade through vCenter and Murphy says surprise. Upgrade fails. Error: disk space has changed. Can't write needed data outside of partition. What? Why does it try to go outside of the environment, the partition? So we roll back and shut down and pause until Monday. I pull the offending flash drive and replace it with a newer, better, and faster one. Upgrade fails. Boot disk not found. Why Murphy? WHYYY? I had tried to manually build ESG at this point in the hopes to join the cluster and decommission the orphan node, and it was fighting back at every turn. Gave up, called HP, ran through the troubleshooting in a very thick Middle Eastern accent by the rep. Not me. Have you tried turning them off and back on again? Yes. Another host? Yes, same issue. Firmware's updated? Firmwares are good, smiley face. More stuff here I can't remember. Most of it made sense, but then he kept repeating how the drive was too big. I'm thinking the local data store along for the ride, which are kind of important to store VMs on for the initial migration. No. $rep no, not those hard drives, the USB drive. $me wait no. It can't be, the flash drive is too big? Really? I scrounge in the desk and find a 2 GB drive. Ironically, it was HP branded. Loaded the ISO and it worked. It's a miracle. It's madness. It's Linux. User calls up 1 minute before closing, demands to be shown how to save a Word document. Title pretty much says it all, but here goes nothing. Me. You user. For context, the help desk closes at 5, but we have a rolling shift of third-line support, whoever draws the short straw, to stay on until 6 for urgent issues. The business understands that this is for urgent issues only, but it's a law firm, full of self-entitled lawyers. So that doesn't usually hold up. Call comes in at 17:59. IT, how can I help? Oh sorry, I know you finish at 6 don't you? Yes I do, what's the issue you're having? I'm having trouble saving this Word document. Okay, what error message are you getting? Error message? Yeah, what message pops up when you try to save it? I haven't, I was hoping you could do that for me. Audibly confused at this point, you want me to save a Word document for you? Yes. Runs through getting the computer number, etc. Just want to get this over with as I'm now working unpaid overtime, there you go, all saved. Can you run me through how you did that? It was too fast. What? Sure, does it again but slower. Hang on, I just need to write this down. I then have to run her through this multiple times so she can write down the steps. This call took 15 minutes. To save a Word doc. But it's a law firm, full of lawyers, and my boss doesn't have a backbone, so any complaints are immediately a talking to / formal warning. So we have to put up with BS like this from users all the time. In defense of tech support. My wife and I were visiting family when my manager sent a frantic email asking for support with an internal application I'd been involved with. I tried to contact the useless lead engineer several times, but he didn't respond. I was worried about being laid off, so I did the work from my mobile, despite being in a different country. Navigating a well-known cloud provider's portals via iOS? Not fun. Giving answers to an indifferent product manager because the lead engineer is AWOL? Less so. For the rest of the trip, I had a nagging sense this was going to backfire on me. And it did. Despite resolving the situation, the lead engineer and his manager blamed me. Said I was reluctant to cede my project to their team and claimed I wouldn't delegate responsibility. Wrong. I was actually glad to be rid of it. Here's an excerpt of our discussion. I called the lead engineer 4 times, but he didn't pick up. Lead engineer's manager, he didn't recognize the number. I would never pick up the phone if I didn't recognize the number. I have a US phone number, called 4 times, and there was an ongoing platform issue. Given this context, it would seem prudent to answer your mobile. Lead engineer's manager, I don't see it that way. You're still wrong. Sad face. This is how the company worked. Engineering managers could come up with ridiculous excuses and were always believed. Her boss, the CTO, calls me in to play the blame game. I had spent hours preparing my defense, instead of working, as I wasn't going to be their scapegoat. I suppose I should have asked why I had to defend myself at all. CTO grills me alone. I calmly explain what happened, provide a chronological outline, and include links to all of the documentation I'd created. CTO concedes that I was not at fault, then sends a **T email to me, my manager's manager, and the lead engineer's manager promising to look into the lead engineer's lack of action. Yet nothing was ever done. It was a kangaroo court. No apologies, no follow-ups from anyone. They never even thanked me for helping out during my time off. I began looking for another job and put up with my manager for a couple more months. Updated my resume while at work. Called in sick several times to interview in person. Did one interview while still at work. Just walked out and met with the hiring manager during my lunch break. I can't begin to describe how satisfying it was to leave this toxic place. They seemed surprised when I put in my 2-week notice. I worked, snoozed, from home the entire time. During my exit interview, HR asked where I was going and how much I would be paid. I politely declined to answer. I still have questions. I had a customer come in yesterday complaining that the wired mouse we sold him for his computer wasn't working properly and that we should give him a refund. I asked what was wrong with it, and he claimed that if he moved the mouse up, the cursor would go down, move it left, it would go right. At this point I'm thinking he somehow enabled mouse inversion on his computer when a thought enters my head. Silly question, but when you use the mouse, are the buttons or the top or the bottom? And his answer? The bottom.